Hello, my name is John Valentine, and thank you so much for joining me today in this class where I'll be talking about designing your business graphics. And more specifically, I'm going to be talking about 11 questions that you should ask yourself before designing a logo and some other graphics related to your business. So, welcome to this class, and these are some of the things I'll be talking about more specifically: the main goals of your business, your target audience, your accomplishments, your current logo, considering other logos, talking about competitors, your themes, the values of your brand, the perception of your brand, marketing channels, and at the end, of course, specific requests. So at the very end, I will also be talking about some conclusion and some final tips and tricks and summarizing the whole class. So make sure to stick around towards the end for all that. But thank you so much for joining me today, and let's get right into the first class here and not waste any time. So of course, as we all know, the looks, designs, logos, and overall graphics for your business, especially nowadays in the social media days, are key. And one of the questions that you should ask yourself before designing one, or before hiring someone to design it, or before designing it for someone else. So of course these are all different perspectives that you can look at. You know, if you want to design it yourself, if you are a freelance graphic designer designing it for someone else, or if you're asking someone to design it. These are still all very important questions that you should ask yourself. So first of all, what are the main essential goals of your business? Understanding the business really helps you understand the feel of the logo and the graphics. Having a vision of your business, what you want to accomplish. It can really help you look at some of the symbols, some colors, etc. That can really help you get into that sort of groove and that mood of what kind of feel you want to create for that logo. So, really considering your vision and your essential goals of the business is very key when it comes to creating your actual logo and some other graphics, whatever it is. Your email newsletter headers, intros, whatever you want to create for your business. So that's definitely a very big part of it, considering the symbols and the colors that come into play with your goals and vision of the overall business. So next, you want to ask yourself, who is your audience? Of course, you should probably know this already anyways, but you should definitely also consider it when designing a logo. Figure out who you're appealing to. That can really help and dramatically change the ideas, the colors, the themes of your logo. The culture, the location, the age especially is definitely going to affect what kind of logo you're creating. I mean, if you have a kids brand and you're designing a logo for 8-year-olds, well, it will probably most likely be very different to a brand that is strictly catering to people who are 50 years old and older. So the age specifically is also a very important part. What kind of culture do you adhere to? Is it only for a specific country? Is it only for your local? Is it a local business that will also only be seen by people from your city? Well, that might look very different depending on where you live. So it's definitely something to take in mind. Who you want to appeal to, and what kind of theme and visuals you want to represent. So it's definitely very important to not just look at the target audience for your products and etc., but also for your graphics and what you want to look like. A soft color, if it's maybe for a specific audience, all kinds of things will fall into place and really depend on what kind of logo you want to create when it comes to creating that, because the target audience can have a huge impact on the reception of your brand and again your graphics, depending on what kind of colors you use. So it's definitely something you want to consider. One of the best exercises you can do, of course, is to you just break down fully your target audience, and of course the more general, the harder it will be to focus on specific cultures, locations, and ages. But again, it is a question to ask yourself. Another great question to ask yourself is, what do you want this logo to accomplish? So what do you want to do with this logo? What do you want to do with this logo or whatever graphics you're creating? Do you want to do a rebrand? Are you attracting new customers? Are you using an old logo and making a new brand? Are you creating a completely new logo from scratch? Do you want to attract new customers? Do you want to see, do you want to show off your values? Do you want a change in brand identification? Maybe you're completely changing your, audience. You're pivoting businesses. Maybe you're going from one service industry to another. Maybe you're changing products. Do you want to strengthen your brand image? Do you want your logo to look differently? Do you want to show your roots more? Do you want to show your theme? considering this question is very important, and it's very similar to the vision question, but sometimes the vision of the actual business is different than what you want to do with a specific logo or a specific graphic. So if you're creating a logo, again, for example, thinking about what you want to accomplish with this logo can be very useful when actually considering on what you want to create. So think about the specific goals, not just your business, but your actual logo you want to accomplish with. So using that, of course, can be very beneficial when it comes to considering what kind of colors and what kind of symbols and themes you want to represent with your actual logo. So what are the pros and cons of your current logo is, of course, another great question to consider when either hiring somebody for a logo, creating your own logo, creating a logo for other businesses. These are important questions you want to ask, not just yourself, maybe the client that you're representing, but considering the pros and cons of a current logo, or even just a sketch or an idea. I'm sure if you're a designer and you're working on logos, if you hear the name of a business and if you hear the idea of a business and you are to create a logo for that business, you have almost an immediate idea of what kind of direction you want to take that in. And so take that first idea, take that current logo, take something that you have that you are basing that idea on, and look at the pros and cons of the logo. Sometimes logos become outdated. They look great 20 years ago, but sometimes a more, nowadays a more sleek and more minimalist idea can sometimes work better. So look at that kind of thing. What do you like personally, and what do you not like? Sometimes these things are not that obvious, but they become obvious when you look at it and really break it down. You're like, okay, well, this logo looks really great, but it doesn't really show that this is a family business. Okay, it doesn't really show that this is a B2B company. It would look great if it were a consumer company, if they're offering products to buy for everybody, but this is a service-based B2B business. Well, that's probably going to look way different than a consumer product business. So really look at that and think about the questions that you want to ask yourself when it comes to creating that logo. So break it down, look at the current logo or the idea or sketch or whatever it is that you currently have, and think about the pros and cons of that logo and what you could improve. And sometimes that will flow into an idea and naturally continue. So the next question that you should consider is, what are logos that you like? Of course, you don't want to, straight away copy someone, but consider yourself who you're inspired by. Sometimes people or even you are not sure where to start exactly, but you might have a certain idea, and you can use them ideas of reference. Of course, no designer likes to copy someone, but I'm not talking about copy, I'm talking about inspiration, and every artist gets inspired by something and by someone. So a good idea would be to ask yourself, well, what logos do you really like? If you're creating a logo for a lawyer business, maybe you can look up the top 20 law firms in New York City, or the top 20 law firms in whatever country that you're working in, and see what makes them great. And you see, okay, well, maybe I like these logos. Or you can naturally think about logos that you already like. If you like the McDonald's logo, for example, of course, one of the most famous logos in the world, and it's a great logo. And do you really like it? Do you like the simplicity of it? Do you like the yellow color of it? What do you like about it? So think about the logos and the graphics that people use and companies use that you already like, and you can use that as a point of reference, as a point of inspiration, and you can use that to carry your idea into the next step. So definitely consider that, and definitely look at something that you are inspired by, and consider that when it comes to creating your own logo and thinking about making your own logo, or becoming inspired in terms of ideas that you want to have for creating your graphics. So on the flip side, or on the similar side of the last question, another important question that you want to look at is, who are your main competitors? How do the logos in your industry look like? All industries have a specific look. Lawyers' logos look one way, sport logos look one way, esport logos have a certain look, technology companies have a certain look. Of course, there are unique logos here and there, but especially if you created logos before, or graphics in that sense, you do know what kind of look and what kind of feel certain industries have. So if you're entering a specific industry and you already know, and you know what kind of logo you want to look like, look at your main competitors, do some research, not just for your own sake and for the design's sake, and maybe for the help of your client or yourself or whoever it is that you're designing for, but also because people have certain expectations. it is helpful for the customer to look at logos that are very similar in the trends, not just for again for your sake, but for them, because they do have certain expectations. If you're a lawyer, if you're a law firm and you create a logo for lawyers, well, then you don't probably want to have a logo that looks like it could be for, an esports company, or, have like a wolf on it and then say, the Wolf Titans or whatever. Well, that logo will probably not do as well in the law firm industry because it looks unprofessional. So people have certain expectations. So it's not just about helping you to create a logo and getting some inspiration and getting some ideas, but rather it is because you want to help people become familiar and help people, put their mind at ease. Be like, okay, you are part of this industry. I am part of this industry. We are professional. This is what it looks like, and this is what they expect a logo for a law firm to look like. So it's definitely something important to keep in mind. So do your research. Again, look at the top 20 companies in that field, in that industry, or not even just the top companies. Just look at any kind of logos. It could be as easy as going on Google and being like, software company logos, lawn care logos, or power washing logos. People have certain expectations, so it could be as simple as that to do some research. First of all, gain some inspiration, and also align yourself with the general idea of that industry for graphics. So we looked at a lot of the things that you want to do. Well, let's consider the question, are there themes or genres that you want to avoid? Are there colors or themes that you don't like? That you don't want to create with, that you don't want your logo to look like, that you don't want that color to look like, you want that other people maybe don't want it to look like. If your client says, look, I want this logo and this logo, but avoid these kind of colors. Are there themes or genres that you want to avoid? Is that a very important question that you want to ask yourself when creating a logo? Because sometimes people have certain ideas that they don't want, so really make sure, first of all, to double check if you're working for someone else, if you're working with a client and maybe they haven't mentioned it, maybe you should straight up ask them before, is there anything that you don't want me to do? Maybe, if you are creating a certain logo, maybe they don't want symbols in it. They just want text. Maybe they don't want specific colors because they hate the color red, or they think it makes them look weak if they use the color pink, or whatever it is. So these are all things that you should consider when creating a logo, not just for yourself but also for someone else. Are there themes or genres that you want to avoid? Whatever it is. There's so many different things that you can incorporate into a logo. Maybe they don't like flowers in the logo. Maybe they don't want animals in the logo because this and this. So there's 100 different and million different reasons that you or other people might not want certain things in a logo. So it is a very important question to consider before you start out. Okay, if I want to create this logo, but I definitely don't want to do that. So that already chips away at that progression of where you want your logo to be headed. So another important question to ask yourself. The next question would be, what are the values for your brand? So not the goals or not the vision, but what are your values? What do you represent? What do you want your brand to represent? What do you want your company to represent? So similar to the themes, values can be reflected in a logo. For example, maybe your whole company is about sustainability. Well, if you look at sustainable, companies that are really, really keen on sustainability and have a very big importance on sustainability, more often than not, sometimes that can be reflected in their logo as well, whether it is a leaf or a tree or whatever it is. I'm sure we all know some companies that are, like vegan food or something like that, naturally organic foods. Well, more often than not, the logo will have a leaf in it or something like that. So that's what I mean when I talk about the values, and that can be very well represented in your logo as well. Of course, there are all kinds of values. As I said, sustainability, you can have family, you can have, if it is a family-owned business, for example, maybe you can have that represented in your logo as well. You are building around people's goals and their values for the brand. So definitely something to look at when creating the logo. Where do you want that? What kind of value do you want to be represented? Again, make sure to clear that up with your client. What exactly they want that to look like. Maybe they don't want to represent their values at all. Also, another important thing. So definitely something to ask them, to ask yourself when you're creating a logo for yourself. What do I want my brand to say? if they look at that, do people automatically know, okay, this is a company that is really big on sustainability. This is a company that is very big on nature and organic. This is a company that's big on family. And all these different things can be represented well in a logo, in general branding and graphics. So definitely something important to consider. So piggybacking off that last question, the next question that you should ask yourself is, how do you want to be perceived? How do you want your brand identity to be perceived? It connects with the target audience. So again, similar to your industry, to your values, to your brands, how do you want your company to be perceived? Because if you look at a logo, whatever logo it is, or whatever graphics it is, people automatically get some kind of feeling about it. And this of course is very dependent on colors, on themes, on symbols they use in the logo. If you look at startup logos, well, they're probably a lot different than traditional coffee shop logos. They're probably different from a coffee shop that's been there for 40 years than a tech startup made in Silicon Valley. So how do you want that to be perceived? And that, of course, connects with all the previous questions that I've asked you. And it's, of course, a question that you can ask after you've answered them, or maybe you can start off with that. But it's definitely a question that you want to ask yourself specifically. What do you want people to think about when they look at the logo? How do you want it to be perceived? And, of course, things that come connecting with that, again, is the target audience, the kind of industry that you're in, but also the feeling. A light blue gives people a different feeling than a harsh red, or a deep black gives a different feeling than a light green. So, color theory and all these different colors, and of course also symbols, play a huge part in how people look at that brand. So it's definitely something to keep in mind when looking at brands and creating that brand and that logo for that brand and that company, because the feeling that you get from a certain logo is, of course, very important. Luxury companies, there are luxury logos that are very sleek and simple, and we all know what a luxury logo looks like. Well, if you see that, what does it make you feel like? It makes you feel that that brand is expensive and they're worth a lot, and it's very good feeling. And if you look at a wholesome food company that creates organic breakfast bars, well, if you look at that, we're like, okay, well, that's a cute wholesome logo. I want to be part of that. That looks delicious. I want to be in with that company. I want to buy their products because that company looks like it's healthy. It has a lot of leaves on it and stuff like that. All these things play into effect when you ask yourself how you want your company and how you want your brand to be perceived. And sometimes people don't think about that too much. But things like that actually do matter. So it's very important to consider that question. Another important question is, what are your successful marketing channels? Where are your customers being reached primarily? Of course, nowadays the best thing would be if you have a diversification of marketing and ad channels, but a lot of companies, especially smaller businesses, have a specific ad channel that works best. People most buy from Instagram ads, or from Facebook ads, or from YouTube ads, or from billboards, or maybe word of mouth, or people use newspaper ads. And the target audience and where you reach them is very, very important, because sometimes graphics and logos in general can work very differently on these different medias. And of course, as I said, most importantly would be if you have a diversification, but that is not always the case, and that's not bad. It can work well. If your business works and you know that 99% of your business comes from Instagram ads, well, you should probably adapt to that rather than having graphics that would work well on a billboard. So brick and mortar stores are very different from Instagram only shops, or newspaper versus online, etc. There's all different types of medias, and sometimes you should ask yourself, well, where is it working? Where are my customers being reached, and can I change, or can I design graphics and logos specifically to also adhere to that kind of media platform and that kind of platform where that kind of audience is reached? So definitely also something to consider, because sometimes graphics can look way different. Of course, they should look way different compared to wherever it is that you're creating them for. So again, work backwards, look at your statistics, look at your reports. What are you creating for, and where are these graphics being placed? Again, Facebook ads should look probably a little bit different than ads in the newspaper. So definitely something to consider when creating your logo and your graphics overall. Now, this last question is mostly for people who are designing graphics and logos for other people. So whether it is that you're a company and you have clients that you're creating for, you work for a company and you're a designer and you're creating logos and graphics for other businesses, for other people, for brands and so on. One of the most important questions is that a lot of people actually overlook, especially when I worked with designers and I worked as a graphic designer myself, is, do you have any specific requests? It seems obvious, but just ask. Sometimes people already have an idea, and most likely they will tell you, but sometimes they don't tell you. They tell you, general ideas. Look, I'm creating a logo for, this law firm. You should probably make it look like this. But sometimes if you have a deeper conversation with them and then just double check with them and ask them again, look, is there anything that you really want to be incorporated? Because sometimes people don't tell you automatically. You need to double check and ask them to make sure that their specific requests are catered. And also, it's of course very important to take all their wants into consideration. And if they tell you something and you incorporate it, well, you're exactly doing what they want you to do. So it's more easy and easier to satisfy their demands, and as their client, of course, make sure that they're happy. So maybe sometimes people want it to be unique, even if it doesn't align with your thoughts and your predisposed ideas of their industry or their target audience. Again, maybe they're creating a sport logo and you have an idea of what it should look like, or a lawyer logo, and you have an idea of what all kind of logos look like in that industry, but they're like, no, I want something completely different. I want something completely new. Actually, great idea, but could you do this? So again, it seems obvious, but just ask if they have any specific requests that you want them they want you to incorporate in that logo and their graphics. So definitely something to ask as well. So, thank you so much for joining me in this class. That was 11 questions that you should ask yourself before designing a logo and or graphics for a business, for a brand. And just to summarize and give some final tips and tricks here, first of all, I want to talk about collaboration. Working, again, if you're doing work for someone else, working with clients isn't always easy. If you've done that before, I'm sure sometimes people have completely different likes and ideas of what you think it should look like, but again, make sure that they are happy, because if you're designing for someone else, it's not for your business, it's for their business, and they should be happy, not you. Of course, you should be happy with your work and what you do, but the main part that you want to focus on is that they're satisfied with what you give them and what you create with. So again, keep that in mind. People sometimes you forget, people are completely different sometimes from you, and they think one thing looks great even if you don't think it looks great, and then you think another thing looks good and they be like, I really don't like that. So just keep that in mind. Sometimes people are completely different to you and how you think things should look like. Also, communication is key. Of course, you don't want to annoy them, but asking yourself these questions, and maybe some of these questions that I mentioned here in the video, you can ask them directly. And so communication is just key in creating a product that everybody's happy with. So definitely keep that in mind as well. And at the end, of course, what do you want? Identify your goals and your path when creating a logo for yourself, or when you talk to a designer and you want them to create a logo, or you're creating a logo for a business as well. Of course, identify what you want to accomplish with that logo and that graphic. So makes it easy to follow the main thread to your final product if you start out with what you want to accomplish. So yeah, these are all things to keep in mind when creating logos and designing graphics for a business. So thank you so much for joining me today. Make sure to hit that follow button on the channel, and I have some great big news. I am now creating a weekly newsletter called Weekly Valentine, where I give social media digital marketing tips and everything every week, and you can read it in only under 5 minutes, of course, to save you time. So make sure to sign up for that. The link will be in my profile, and you can also just go to tinyurl.com/weeklyval and sign up for the newsletter there. So thank you so much for joining me today. Make sure to check out all my other videos related to digital marketing, Instagram, and all kinds of social media platforms, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, whatever it is. So make sure to check those out, and thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you in the next class. Goodbye.